Good morning, Sooner Nation. Welcome to a late version of Oklahoma Postgame Live at the voice of college football. Again, my apologies for not being able to make it Saturday night. Had a very bad migraine that I was battling through the last part of the game. So my apologies, but here we are a couple of days later. But still have a lot to talk about just to unpack this game as Oklahoma gets the bowl eligibility, wins 28-13 over Oklahoma State in the Bedlam matchup. So, like I said, there's a lot of things to unpack, and just I mean, I think like we've come accustomed to this season, just a very bizarre game. In all kind of in all phases. I think a lot of us were, if you were like me, and I think I tweeted this out, I think a lot of you watching this game when Oklahoma got out to this 28 to nothing lead in the first quarter, a lot of us were thinking, okay, where's this team been all year? And then um and then the next three quarters, the team that we've seen all year was there. So, starting in the first quarter, Oklahoma obviously capitalized off of that momentum early on. Had a great offensive drive to start the game. Came out throwing the ball a lot, particularly in that first possession. Mixed in a couple of runs, but really it was Dylan Gabriel through the air. Um, and then Oklahoma was benefited by a couple of turnovers from Oklahoma State to capture that 28 to nothing lead in the first quarter, and just really kind of hung on after that. I think when you look offensively, I think Dylan Gabriel was really good in the first half, particularly the first quarter. Um, in orchestrating some of those drives early on for the Sooners in the first quarter. Yes, they were benefited by some turnovers, no doubt whatsoever. But I think he was really good in that first quarter for Oklahoma um, in the game. Um, Overall, when you look at, sorry, I'm just getting stuff up here just so I have it. Had the he had that 2 yard run in that first possession. Then he had the 30-yard pass. Then the next couple of plays, next couple of scoring drives came off of the turnovers. So I think he was really good in the first, particularly in the first quarter. But as good as he was in the first quarter, him and the offense as a whole were equally as bad through the last three quarters. When you look at this, Oklahoma had almost an incredible almost 300 yards of total offense in the first quarter. When you looked at it, I think it was around 290 something, and they finished with 434. So you have almost 300, and you have a little bit less than 130, 140 yards for the remainder of the game, in which Oklahoma just wasn't able to get anything going. Um, as good as Gabriel was in the first quarter, he was equally as bad in the second half. I believe one out of 13 in the second half, with one of those passes being just kind of a flat pass. And so I thought I thought the game plan was really solid first in the first half, and then I thought that the some of the play calling was interesting, and I think they just never were able to kind of get that back. In the second half, I would have liked to seen them lean on the run game a little bit more. I would have liked to have seen them start running the clock a little bit more in the fourth quarter. And I think the offense is very thankful, certainly, that the defense played as well as they did. For me, I think it was the most complete defensive performance that Oklahoma has had since Nebraska, early on in the year. And I know at this point, Nebraska's not a great offensive team, but at that point, they were pretty serviceable on the offensive side of the ball. But yeah, I think the defense was out there for a total of 102 plays. Spencer Sanders attempted 67 passes in the game. Oklahoma was able to intercept, turn him over 4 times, and I think ultimately that's how Oklahoma won the game. Is being able to force turnovers and being able to, particularly late, they forced a turnover inside the red zone when Oklahoma State was driving. And so I think if Oklahoma was playing a little bit of a better offense, this might have been a different story. But I think the good news is, I mean, obviously the good news is that Oklahoma is able to achieve bowl eligibility, 6-5, heading into the last game of the year against Texas Tech and Lubbock. And Oklahoma's coming into that game, I think, with a 2.5 or 3-point favorite. But yeah, defense played incredibly well. Drake Stoops, I think, was the best player for Oklahoma offensively. Eric Gray was running the ball at a high level. Javante Barnes ran the ball really well. So it's one of those things where um, it's kind of inexcusable for Oklahoma to go 3 quarters without scoring a point after scoring 28. I don't know. It's one of those things I don't know that I ever remember seeing a team go from as hot as they were in the early part of the game to just being very anemic on offense. And so that's the consistency that this team needs to start playing with a little bit as you head into the bowl season, and certainly kind of thinking through that for next season right now. So, but yeah, the bowl eligibility thing is something it's huge for this team, huge for the younger kids to get so many more practices. I mean, I think it's huge for um, just the trajectory of this program going forward. I think missing a bowl game would have been catastrophic in a lot of different ways. Although I know it's not like when people say Oklahoma getting bowl eligibility, that's getting bowl eligible. That's something that should be given each and every year. But with the way the season's gone, and then now you got a chance to go 7-5, and so that 7-5 would mark the start that Oklahoma had in Bob Stoops' first year. And so, there's some things that you can see that this team is getting better at on the defensive side of the ball, particularly and we'll see how they're able to carry that over. I think a byproduct of this weekend was the recruiting aspect of things. And so let's kind of get to any questions or comments that you guys have. And then we'll talk about the recruiting side of things. Um, I love the screen name Kyler Mayfield. So Kyler Mayfield, I think a lot of things that I've seen, kind of lend it to believe that the Texas Bowl is a decent destination. The Independence Bowl is I've seen those are the two ones that I've probably seen more prominently. So I would, if I was to guess at this point, I would think those two bowls is possible. Other than that, I haven't really seen a whole lot. So it'll depend on what happens this weekend with some of these games. It's kind of the pecking order of some of these bowl games and teams, and how they'll kind of fit into that as well. Yeah, I think that was one of the things that was very confusing to me. They really abandoned the running game for whatever reason, and it's something that Levy hasn't necessarily done a whole lot of. So I don't know. I mean, it was certainly interesting, and I know he talked in the press conference about that was on him, um, and those types of things, but. But we'll see as we continue to go forward. I think they should have, ran a little bit more clock, put more emphasis on running the ball. It's a delicate balance because you don't want to completely go into a shell. You want to still be able to attack, but at some point there in the fourth quarter, when that Gabriel's not on his game, and you think you look at that. and say, okay, maybe we need to lean on the running game a little bit. Not only EG, but also Javante Barnes, who was running the ball really well, 13.6 yard. I'm sorry, 9.8 yards per carry in the game. Only had 6 attempts, but did have 59 yards. And so, he was running hard. And he's a guy that he's a little bit more of a bruiser that you can use in situations like that. So would have anticipated us using the ground game a little bit more um, in that game, without a doubt. Um, And yeah, third down conversions were big as well. I believe Oklahoma was 1 of 11 against West Virginia and Morgantown last week, and then they come back with a 1 for 14 performance this week. So again, not good. You're 2 for your last 25 on 2 for your last 25 in the last 2 games on third down conversions, and that's just not going to get it done. You've got to be more you got to be more effective. You got to be more efficient. I think part of it late was the byproduct of Dylan Gabriel's lack of accuracy in the second half was leading to a lot of third and long situations. So this team isn't good enough on the offensive side of the ball at this point right now to be able to overcome those third and long situations time in and time out. So I think that's something to think about and something to consider when you um, when you look at that completely. Um, but yeah, they've got to get a little bit better on your third down conversions to be able to put yourself in. I mean, first and second down to put yourself in a position to be successful on third down, and so that wasn't the case. And so we'll see if they can rectify that and make that a little bit better um, later on down the road. Um, so Jimmy, it looks like I was just kind of looking as you're speaking. It looks like there's a little bit of a cold front there in Lubbock. Friday night into Saturday. Looks like Saturday's a high of 47, low of 36. There's about looks like there's a chance of snow Friday night um, into Saturday. Yeah, they're talking about 2 to 4 inches possibly Friday, and then looks like a 95% chance, and then so it might not be ideal conditions in Lubbock, which is weird to see some potential snow there. So we'll keep an eye on that, but that it might not be, especially for a night game, might not be um, the best situation. Um, so looking at some potential bowl matchups, I looked at this a little bit earlier. I've seen some potential matchups against Mississippi State, which would be interesting. I've seen some potential matchups against Arkansas, in the Texas Bowl, which again would be an interesting matchup. And then I'm trying to remember a couple of the other ones. One was against SMU, and so we'll just see how this last weekend goes. I think teams will be jockeying for position, and things like that as we go forward. Ryan, I thought the defense played well, but we should be cautious with the optimism. That was a bad offense with a lot of their best players missing. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Spencer Sanders was not certainly at his best. I mean, he gave a great effort. He had by himself. He had over 420 yards of total offense. But yeah, no, you're right, and that's one of the reasons I mentioned if it was a little bit of a better team, it would have been interesting to see how that would have went in the last part of the game. But thankfully Oklahoma was able to get enough stops and turn the ball over enough to secure the win. um yeah, it was interesting. The play calling was very, I think, was not only the snapping of the ball so quickly and things like that was very um interesting. to say the least. Do you think we slow up offensively because our current guys? No, I think the problem is it was the exact opposite. They were running too fast late in the game. Um, so no, I don't necessarily think there's any concerns with this full system. I will say this, and this kind of will be a good um, segue into the recruiting side of things. As the Dylan Gabriel to me, I mean, I'm not gonna rail on the kid, but Dylan Gabriel has been a bit of a disappointment for me this year. Um, I've watched a fair amount of his stuff coming into the season at UCF. He has not been anywhere near as accurate and as explosive in the passing game as I anticipated him and this team being. And so I think it will be interesting as early on in the year, I um, I thought with Jackson Arnold coming in, it would be great for Arnold to really have an opportunity to kind of learn from Gabriel in his first year, and then kind of take over the job the next year. However, I would say with how Gabriel has played down the stretch, I would say that it's at least 50-50 that Jackson Earl can come in and win this job immediately next year. Um, there's not anything been I would assume that we see Dylan Gabriel come back next year. Nothing's been announced or anything like that. I don't know, why he would do anything differently, if I'm being honest. But um, I think Arnold has every opportunity to win that job next year. So I think it'll be a very open quarterback competition coming into spring ball next year. So I think it will that'll be something to keep your eye on for Oklahoma. You feel like at this point you've got three decent quarterbacks that you can kind of keep working with in terms of younger kids along with Dylan Gabriel. So and so I think there was a question here, recruiting, is Hicks going to flip? So I think from everything that I've heard, everything that I've been told, um, I think there's a decent chance that's happening. I'm not saying it's a done deal. I'm not saying it's even Oklahoma even leads. I'm just saying there's a decent chance that this is going to happen. And so we'll see how we'll see how this continues to play out. It'll be one of those things that goes to signing day. And we'll see if Oklahoma's able um, to get him to flip from A&M. A&M, I mean, he does have another visit to A&M next week, and so with things, so I think this is the right time for Oklahoma to really pounce with things very much up in the air with Texas A&M right now. They are struggling about as bad as probably worse than Oklahoma has this year, with arguably much more talent on both sides of the ball. I think they're four. If I remember right, I think they're 4-7 right now at this point, and they host LSU on Saturday. And I don't know if any of you guys saw the picture floating around on social media of their crowd after halftime against UMass on Saturday, but it was extremely sparse. I would say that, I mean, there were maybe a couple, about 5 or 6 thousand people, 10,000 people there. Like it was, in a stadium that holds over 100,000, and it was so. I think the fans have very much spoken. Now, what does that mean from a coaching perspective? I mean, who knows? It's an astronomical buyout, over $80 million buyout for Jimbo Fisher. So I think just the thought that he may not necessarily be there next year, and things like that. I think that kind of is something that will obviously play into the mind of of DJ Hicks and what he does. So more to come on that one, but I think he'll be in College Station this upcoming weekend, from what I understand. And then I think the other big one to kind of the other thing to kind of think through is Peyton Bowen. This has been one that we've talked about for quite some time here about, will he flip, will he not? He's been to Oklahoma on unofficial visits so many times. I mean, I've lost count. Like, it's double digits at this point. And so there's a couple of things that really make me think that this is something that very well could happen. And I lean towards it. It will happen in terms of a flip to Oklahoma. His girlfriend has signed the letter of intent, is committed to Oklahoma soccer. So I think that's a big. I mean, um, people don't underestimate the value of that. I think that is something that plays and will play and is playing a significant factor in that. And I think the other thing is for the first time, there's been rumors of this flip since spring. Um, early spring, early summer, that he could flip from Notre Dame to Oklahoma. Obviously, A&M's in the picture. I think Oregon's in the picture, but I think looking at that, and then now for the first time, there's been two or three guys that have officially flipped their prediction from Notre Dame to Oklahoma. So that's for the first time ever. We've heard about this for a while, but the first time. So I feel as good as you can about any kid. At this point, I feel pretty solid. That this is something that could very well happen come signing day. But we'll see how that continues to go. I think he is a guy very much like DJ Hicks. He is a guy that will commit. If he commits, will be probably an instant day one starter. I think, particularly for Hicks, but I think Peyton Bowen as well would be a day one starter in that defensive backfield. I think, just looking at the possibility of Peyton Bowen um, in the backfield would be, or in the defensive backfield. You know, right there would be, um, I think would be very, very enticing. 5-star kid, one of the best players in the country overall. So Oklahoma still has an opportunity to get into that top five. I think everybody's seen Oklahoma's got a couple of commitments from a couple of 3 stars. Ashton Sanders was one that committed a couple of days ago. I think it was Sunday after the um, after Bedlam, and he's a 3-star guy out of California, defensive lineman, 6'1", 270. He's a guy that actually like I said, he's a little bit maybe undervalued, under recruited. Perhaps was originally committed to California, but has since obviously flipped and verbally committed to Oklahoma. He's a guy that's actually, I just saw today, where he's going to play in the Army All American game. So again, he's a guy that a little bit lower recruited, but again, he is he's a guy that that Miguel Chavis really, really likes. And then Taylor Ween from Nolensville, Tennessee, edge guy, 6'5", 235. Again, another 3-star guy, has committed to Oklahoma yesterday. So those couple of guys are there. Then you're waiting on some of the bigger guys. Tasuli Akana is a guy that'll be will certainly be um, a signing day guy. I think are close to there and close to it there. I think Oklahoma and Texas are very much in the mix. Oregon's again in the mix there, um, as well. And so we'll see how this continues um, to to go. I mean, I think this is going to be a team that has um, a big roster turnover. I think you're going to see a ton of kids in the portal um, from um, that Oklahoma's going after. I think you're going to see a tons of kids Oklahoma's going to process, for lack of a better word. And so that will be very intriguing to see as we go down the stretch here, and portal season, starting to happen here. By and large, um, after these next couple of games, you got your championship games, and then obviously the last weekend of the regular season, this weekend, and then upcoming next week, the championship games. Then you'll see a lot of these portal guys will start putting their names in the portal a lot over the next month, as you look through in between the end of the season and then bowl season, and certainly thereafter, as you start getting into off season and spring as well. So um, let's see if any questions. Yeah, completely agree with this, Ryan. I think the touch isn't there from time to time, without a doubt. Um, do you think some of these players from Lincoln Riley's tenure don't like how hard they have to work under Brent? I don't necessarily know that that's the case, Norwooding, but I think what's happening is that the mindset isn't quite where it needs to be a championship winning football team. And when I say that, it sounds like, and I'm just reading between the lines in a lot of the comments. I mean, I know Venables has said a couple of times we need to get to the point where we just get pissed off and we get mad about these things. I think we've got a team that very much accepts mediocrity. Not that they want to be average, they want to be great. But your want and your actions on the field have to be the same thing, or else you're not gonna be able to do that. And so I think um, I think that's a situation where that mentality hasn't been completely bought in yet. So I don't know that it's necessarily anything working hard, but I think it may be a little bit of that, but I think the mentality is still in a bad spot. I don't think so. I don't think so, Jimmy. I mean, from everything that I've heard, that he's not really going to be an Oklahoma guy. Have heard that he's moved on and to other spots. He would be just an outstanding pickup from an offensive line perspective, but I think he may be a Texas or Texas A&M guy, from what I'm hearing. So thanks everybody for joining. I don't have any more questions here. It doesn't look like. So thanks everybody for joining. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit more recruiting. We'll start previewing Texas Tech and kind of look at, maybe some potential, landing spots for Oklahoma in the postseason as we move forward here to the last. This went so fast, last game of the year. So last week of the year. So make sure you guys join us tomorrow, same time, 11:30 to 12:30, and we'll talk Oklahoma football. We'll talk some national stuff as the conference championship games and leading into the bowl selection and college football playoff the following weekend. So, yeah, like I said, thanks for being here. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you know when we're going live. And we will talk again tomorrow. Boomer Sooner. God bless.